Hello, how are you? I just wanted to say thank you very much for your continued support of the Cloud Therapist channel. There's lots more content coming soon, so please stay in touch. Hello and welcome to the Cloud Therapist channel. I'm Richard Simon. This is the July 2023 edition of Cloud State of Play. This is a slightly special edition because it's been a year since we started the Cloud State of Play segment. And I'm very pleased that Paul has stayed with me all this time and puts up with my sort of crazy ideas and topics. So I do really appreciate that. So as you all should know, Paul is the Director of Infrastructure at Bloor Research. Yeah, we're looking forward to this particular special edition. Let's say hello to Paul. Paul, how are you doing?
I'm well, and hopefully not looking another year older, despite all the
a year younger,
a year younger. Yeah, absolutely. No, things are good, and it's been an interesting ride in the last year. Let's hope we can keep it going.
Indeed. Yeah. So yeah, how are you how are you feeling about sort of us having sort of reached the 1 year mark on Cloud State of Play?
Interesting that there is never a shortage of things to talk about. And things move so fast in the cloud world that we can go back and revisit stuff and think, my goodness me, there's new things in here. So yeah, I think looking at it's shown me how dynamic that world is, how fast it changes, and you'll love this bit. I think bit by bit you're converting me in some elements to the digital native world. I'm an old fogey at heart, an old mainframe bot at heart. So
I'm gonna have you beating me at ChatGPT prompt soon. I think you're gonna be saying, Richard, have you seen this one? This one's really cool.
Yeah, one of my colleagues, I sent him something, and I apologized for being a little facetious. He says, no, it's great. Facetious means it's definitely not ChatGPT that wrote it.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, I think what our dear viewers don't understand or don't appreciate is that Paul and I are always going back and forth on WhatsApp in the background, discussing things, sharing articles and news items and technology stuff as well. So for that reason, I think we thought we would we have our usual sort of 3 topics for this edition. So that's kind of the usual thing that we do. But we thought we'd also kind of reflect a little bit on sort of the 1 year anniversary of Cloud State of Play. I think it's fair enough to do that. So we'll do a quick kind of review and maybe discuss some of the highlights if we can remember anything from the last 12 months. And we'll also discuss our 3 topics for this month as well, as always. And those are, first one is British Airways. Is it an airline that's being held back by its IT and technology? So I'm sure Paul's got a lot to say about that, and so do I as a customer. The second one is a DevOps and Cloud Trends report, which came out quite recently by InfoQ. So we're going to be going through some of the highlights of that. And the third one, I'm really looking forward to this one, is cloud lock-in real? And this is a topic that Paul selected, so I'm looking forward to looking at his reasons and his points around that. And that one we haven't rehearsed. Actually, we haven't rehearsed any of this at all. I think Paul's gone off and kind of done his research, and I've done my research. So we're gonna sort of get to the
lock horns.
Yeah, lock horns, exactly. And what was the last time you used? Keep your powder dry, you said as well.
Yeah,
so yeah, that's a good one. I love that one.
Absolutely.
So yeah, cool. So I think let's start with the kind of quick reflection on Cloud State of Play. We said we'll kind of spend about 5-10 minutes on that before we go into anything. So first of all, I never thought that we would kind of be able to keep up the pace. So I'm really glad that we've more or less kind of kept up the pace. I think we've been in and out of some of the editions that we've done over the last 12 months, but I'm really grateful that we have. And it's also kind of given me not only kind of an outlet to discuss these sort of things in terms of these sort of IT topics, which I love doing, as my audience will probably vouch for that. But it's also an opportunity to learn as well. So I learned, a lot from you. I learned kind of the counterpoints, something's kind of opposing the point of view that I have, and also just kind of from the amount of research that I have to do sometimes as well for the topics, just to kind of bring some good richness to the discussion and the topics that we discuss. But yeah, all positive for me. How about you?
Yeah, it's been a fascinating journey for me. I mean, my history really is as a sales and marketing specialist in the IT industry, and I'm previously, becoming an analyst. And so, to an extent, I had a very generic knowledge and understanding of the cloud and all the tools that were necessary and all the techniques that were necessary to make it work. While I understood its potential benefits, I've been absolutely fascinated by the way it's almost deconstructed the old model and having to put it all back together again, and some of those challenges. I was always known a little bit as a propeller head when I was in sales in mainframe days. So there must be a part of my brain that quite enjoys the sort of getting in amongst the bits and pieces, the bits and bytes. But I've found that journey of understanding of what's involved in putting, cloud applications and cloud systems together to be a real eye opener, and it's given me a much stronger base on which to, compare the old and the new worlds.
Yeah. I have to say that the extra editing chore is not great for me, because I have to end up doing all the editing and stuff like that. I might pass that on to you one day. You never know.
This might be the last one we ever do.
Oops. Maybe I should have mentioned that one. So I think I think that kind of aspect of it is, but I think that's kind of part and parcel of what I really do. So I'm just kind of saying that in a tongue-in-cheek sort of way. And I think YouTube seems to be having some problem with the intro and outro music track that I use at the moment. They keep striking my Cloud State to Play videos every single time I upload it. They say, "Oh, you've breached some copyright or something." So then I have to protest and remind them, "Remember last month when I won this?" And then they go, "Oh yes, okay, right. We'll take the strike off that." So that's an interesting one. But yeah, the educational element of it, and we've had a lot of fun, kind of discussing things, and sort of I very much sort of appreciated our rapport and kind of building up a friendship with you as well. That's been kind of a tremendous bonus for me, really. It's and obviously I don't think we can go into too much about the topics. I think we've kind of covered so many things in the past. I can barely remember them anyway, so not something that we'll probably go into a lot of detail. But I think we've picked on a few things along the way. We've kind of done some highlights, some recaps as well, and reviews, and some kind of forward thinking ideas as well. So that's all been, I think, really, really interesting as well.
Couple of things have stood out for me. I think from a cloud technology point of view, and the sort of discussions we had. One was around observability.
Yeah,
so I've done an awful lot of work around IT operations, AI management, monitoring, all AI ops, all those sort of things. And observability sort of came in as a somewhat different, potentially, sort of paradigm, if you like, of understanding what was going on in terms of the application. And two things. Firstly, it made me go and look at that whole dev environment, cloud dev environment.
Yeah.
Just how do you get that level of observability to understand how it's going to impact the infrastructure? But also then it enabled me to have quite an interesting fight with a number of vendors of the old school who used the term observability when actually what they meant was IT monitoring, infrastructure.
Yes.
And so I've been able to go armed that says, no, that's not really observability. I mean, like Canute trying to hold the water, the tide,
Yeah.
losing the battle with everybody, marketing departments using the term. But it was a very interesting journey for me to go and understand that element, because it was a big hole for most IT departments, was to understand how to provide that, end-to-end understanding of what was going on. So I think that was a key one. And the other one was to get to grips with cloud networking too. That's a topic that you're quite sort of keen on.
Yeah.
And again, it nearly scrambled my brain, because obviously you actually have to get to grips with not different concepts, but different constructs. I think it's quite interesting. Right. Networks to me are wide area networks, and obviously networks in a cloud world are quite often almost internal to the machine. It's really quite strange. Anyway, but let's not revisit it. But so that's two areas where I think I really did get something out of it, and hopefully people who are listening got something out of it too. So
yeah, I mean, it's certainly the feedback I've had has been very good. I mean, I'd love to kind of see you guys kind of watching this stuff, a little bit more interaction, and by all means sort of put some comments into the the videos sort of comment section and so on. I'd love to hear that. But I mean, funnily enough, I was at the AWS Summit recently, and somebody from the company called Commodore actually recognized me, not as Richard Simon, but actually as the cloud therapist, which was fantastic. And they just came up to me and said, "Hey, you're the guy on YouTube. I'm subscribed to your channel." So that was fantastic. That was very flattering to
and getting
and humbling.
Getting LinkedIn requests too from people. Interesting.
Yeah. That was interesting. So yeah, shout out to the Commodore guys.
Yeah,
appreciate all you guys do, and hopefully I'm going to have them on the channel in the near future as well. But yeah, I mean, again, topic wise, I think too many to cover for us here. But it's given me kind of an opportunity as well to kind of get things from your side of the street, so to speak, and kind of understand your perspective on things, and that's been really good. But also the being able to track certain stories as well. I mean, we've tracked the Microsoft and Activision saga, which is still ongoing. And I think it's almost pretty much kind of there now, with only the CMA holding out on that. But we might revisit that as a conclusion, conclusive topic at some point. But yeah, it's been good kind of keeping an eye on certain things as well. And I'd love to cover kind of more of these, but it's just not possible due to time constraints and other commitments. But we are, I think we kind of are getting some attention. There's some sort of IT folks that I'm connected to, and commentators in general I get some feedback on sometimes. So yeah, that's always good, even if it's kind of in disagreement or whatever, and that's fine. It's good to get that sort of communication and learn more. Cool. Yeah. So hopefully we'll see how we get on. I think we're probably going to maintain the format, kind of going forward, but we'll see if we can kind of maybe variate things a little bit every now and then, in kind of how we do things. But yeah. Okay. So sorry, was there anything else that you wanted to?
I would say trouble is you could natter on for a long time doing that. I think that's
we could
get a sense that we're going to carry on doing this because we're getting something from it, and the audience is getting something from it.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's move on to the first of the three topics for this month. So the first one was British Airways, an airline that's held back by its IT ? So I think, I mean, for me, there's been a string of sort of high-profile sort of IT problems that British Airways has experienced especially over the last few years, at least for me, kind of in terms of me noticing it. I think the last one, if I recall, if I bring up my notes, was in the May of this year, where they had to cancel dozens, according to the BBC report, dozens of flights due to IT problems, and that was exactly because of IT, not because of other sort of issues, because of drones flying around Heathrow or Gatwick or something like that. So the cancellation was due to the knock-on effect of the technical problems. That was the quote-unquote bit that BA
I think it was about getting what they call departure control information to the flight deck. So the pilots need what they call departure control information, number of passengers, weights, loadings, etc. And apparently that wasn't getting through. There was some sort of problem in the application that wasn't communicating that out to the aircraft. So the aircraft couldn't take off. It was as simple as that.
Yeah, and I mean, again, just like it seems to be like the customers always seem to kind of are in the firing line. They seem to kind of suffer when this sort of thing happens. So got an IT problem, can't get that signal over to whatever, then just cancel some flights. That will fix it. that will cure the backlog that we have. And no different from Bank of England. Got a problem, inflation going up, just put up the interest rates, for that. Or a bank that needs a bit of bailing out because they, gambled a bit too much on the markets, and just get the public to bail you out.
It's a management failure as much as an IT failure. I mean, yes, it's an IT failure that's actually caused the problem, but it's a management issue, for example. I mean, I got involved back in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, with a Prolog-based program that was looking at what happens when you get major cancellations, major issues. How do you reschedule everything? And there was a set of parameters you put in the front, which you could amend quite granularly as to how far did you want to make it the most cost-effective way of rescheduling, and how far do you want to minimize passenger pain. And literally, it was almost like a slider. And the Prolog system would go away and work out how to reschedule the flights based on the criteria that you just given it. And you think, haven't we got the ability to do that now? Or are they just going, make it the most cost-effective way possible, please? I think that's a management issue.
I think that dial is probably set to make customers suffer setting. It's been stuck there for the last decade or so for British Airways.
I think from a wider management, I mean, I've got to sort of, I ought to sort of own up to a sort of special interest here, because my elder brother is an ex-IBM person, and he's 14 years older than me, and he was involved in the first British Air, what was then BOAC, passenger reservation system and departure control system. So do a check-in. So that was mid-60s with IBM. And the underlying technology that drove the transactional systems is still running on IBM mainframes today. You go to the IBM site and you can still find details of TPF there and how it runs. So that in itself tells a story. I mean, it was a very, very efficient and effective transaction monitor. But, the world's changed. And I just think management at BT took their eye off the ball badly. I think they got caught out too by the low-cost model. I think they disparaged the low-cost model, thought it wasn't going to impact them. They're not flying to big hub airports. It's a lousy customer experience. Well, your own customer experience ain't that great anymore. But I think management were asleep at the wheel as the world changed around them, and they spent too much time and effort outsourcing stuff without understanding the implications of what they were outsourcing.
And talking customer experience. So this is a little bit old. I'm sure I'll find a more up-to-date version. But the one I managed to find was from a few years ago. It was a Which magazine survey. So Which magazine is a consumer kind of survey, if you're not aware, or a consumer magazine if you're not aware of it. And for the short haul sort of survey that they did, I think British Airways was third from the bottom of the list. And again, it's highlighted, the report highlighted, which magazine's report highlighted IT computer failures from going back to like 2017, 2018, and so on. And I remember a few of those were big howlers back in those days. And it seems to be a perennial thing. It just seems to be like every year there's one or two everybody who's going to Mallorca, that can't get your luggage because the IT system, for luggage messed up and things like that.
And quite often, if you look at Uptime report, the Uptime Institute and some of their reports on outages, the percentage that are human error, and that one in 2017 you were talking about was, somebody managing to switch the power off in a data center. Somebody threw the wrong switch. Yeah. But then you say, well, what happened to the backup? Okay, where's the, I can remember looking at reservation systems at Air France that you could literally switch the mainframe off at Air France, and the people at the front desk booking people in would see the screen flicker just for a second while it the transaction. Completely mirrored system, and that costs money. You just wonder whether getting caught in the sort of maelstrom of the sort of changing world, certainly in short and medium haul for BA, they just took their eye off the ball in terms of the importance of technology.
Yeah, and I find that kind of bizarre that they're sort of stuck in those sort of systems and that way of thinking, and it just seems to be affecting them in terms of kind of their serviceability really and custom. I mean, the recent one I had was only a couple of weeks ago when I was trying to upgrade my seat, and their website just refused to accept my transaction, and it went everything from we are unable to messages to kind of seat change was not confirmed, and then it got to, sorry, there seems to be a technical problem, we apologize for the inconvenience, blah blah blah, and then at the end it just said, our systems are not responding. Sorry. And that was, I'm not kidding, because I took screenshots of all of that bizarre sequence that happened. And then in the end, I ended up kind of being squeezed in a middle seat. And not only was that experience and the message not helpful, but they weren't even diplomatic. It wasn't kind of, it was like look, I can't talk to the server, tough. It was, I mean, literally, it was basically that last message was, our systems are not responding. Sorry, I can't do anything. It's like, you're not going to sugarcoat that at all? You're not going to kind of, butter me up with something? No, just our systems are not responding, and that's it.
One of the things that I've been sort of focused on, certainly in the last year, is how do we get to a point where your service level agreements are around business services, not around uptime, not around, latency or whatever. The IT is held to account for a business service. And if that business service is mission critical, you're going to be impacted in your own job if you don't get that right. And I think there's a real sea change got to happen. There's been too much sort of internal navel gazing on latency, performance, uptime, rather than actually what's the system supposed to be doing.
Yeah,
and what services it's supporting, and so I think that's where BA have gone badly wrong.
Yeah, and I don't know what their KPIs are, but it doesn't seem to be anything to do with serviceability
and so much of it is outsourced, and you have to think, what does the outsourcing contract look like? What's their relationship management with the outsourcers? Whether it's sort of Indian outsourcers or it's Amadeus who do their sort of reservation and departure control systems now. You just think, how do they manage, and what's their attitude towards the outsourcing contract? Is it just a way of reducing cost? In which case you're going to run into trouble.
And I mean, I wrote it down when I was screenshotting. I sent it to somebody and I said, who writes these messages? Because the UI, the UX of the UI experience is just terrible. And I suspect, I mean, I would love to see kind of modernization of that and getting more into sort of cloud, technology being used and things like that. I just don't know where they are with that. Maybe that's something to dig up.
Yeah, I think you'd have to sort of delve quite deeply into each individual company. I know a lot of work's been going in to try and migrate those TPF systems, those systems, IBM-based and Unisys-based systems, into something slightly less monolithic, and they've struggled. Everybody struggles to actually do that. Why? I don't know. We'd have to, as you say, we'd have to dig deeper and get somebody on who's intimately involved in how the heck do you get a highly performant mainframe-based transaction processing system into a highly performant and highly available and resilient cloud system.
Yeah.
And
scalable.
I've got some war stories from the early days of this, but I think the world's moved on a lot. It ought to be possible.
Yeah, and I would expect some of the newer airlines to be a lot better at doing that.
Absolutely. I mean, EasyJet, I know, for example, speaking to EasyJet about 5 or 6 years ago, they were very much, had a very modern application. They actually only used the cloud for the bursts. So when they had a promotion, or they knew there was a holiday season coming up, they actually basically got the instances in the cloud to cover the burst, and they burst into the cloud. But then they designed their application that way, and so you go to EasyJet and Ryanair, you very rarely get trouble booking flights. Very rarely get trouble booking flights. Every now and again, but I mean, actually, it's surprisingly good and and real time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the main problem. But yeah, we could go on talking about that. Yeah. Okay.
But the answer to your question is it being held back by its IT systems? Yes. Are the IT systems held back by a management that took its eye off the ball? Absolutely.
Yeah. It's further up the chain. I agree. Yeah. Okay, cool. That was a interesting topic, cool topic. Okay, so the next one we're going to be talking about is the DevOps and Cloud Trends report by InfoQ. And now I picked out a few of the highlights of that. There's a really great chart on that actually, which I will share the link to the report in the description of the office talk. So all the details will be there. And Paul, I think, has got some ideas around also his kind of view of some of the information in the report. I kind of picked on a few really highlights which I thought were sort of interesting. First one, it said, was cloud innovation has transitioned from a revolutionary phase to an evolutionary phase, or an evolutionary sort of stage. And I would probably agree with that. I think overall, I think the revolution was cloud itself and actually doing cloud, and now is kind of I think I said this in a AWS Fest event that I did was it earlier this year or last year, I can't remember now. It's all a blur, but anyway, it was one of those online webinars that I participated in, and I kind of noticed that the sort of AWS reInvent, for example, tends to have almost like an Intel TikTok sort of approach. So one year it's kind of new services, stuff like that, and then the following year it's it's sort of incremental sort of updates of those services. So it's kind of innovation and then sort of incremental updates. So for me, I think I'm probably leaning towards kind of that statement being true. What's your take?
I sort of view it in a slightly different way, in the sense that they've run into some barriers in developing and running for the cloud that have slowed down the ability for people to innovate. I still think the cloud can provide revolutionary change for businesses, but I think we've got to a point where it's got so complex, across multi-cloud and in this sort of distributed architecture, that actually the developers are starting to find it more and more difficult to work at the sort of pace with the sort of innovation they want, because they're now running into some of the interesting challenges of making it all hang together, in a real-time, multi-cloud world, and it's geographically dispersed. It's dispersed from a sort of computing perspective. Yeah. And I mean, there's a couple of quotes I want to do. One comes directly from the InfoQ report, and it's the lead DevOps editor, Matthew Campbell, said, "We're now in a phase where we're trying to figure out how do we sustainably leverage all of the cool stuff that we've invented and created and all these ways of interacting with each other and move it to a place where we can innovate comfortably going forward. It says two things to me. Firstly was everybody got focused on the cool stuff.
Yes.
And you're now getting to the point where it is, okay, it's cool stuff, but why did you do it?
Yeah.
It's not what have you done, it's why have you done it and what's business going to get out of it. I think there's an element of that, but there's also an element, and the second quote comes, and this was people we sort of came across the other day, this new firm, Wing Cloud. I sent you the link, and we might provide the link to the people here.
Yeah. And
the CEO, Elad Ben Israel, who's ex AWS, he's worked in all sorts of cloud environments. And his quote was, building applications for the cloud sometimes feels like spilling my kid's bag of unused Lego blocks all over the living room floor and trying to build a castle. After going through torn up play cards, scary Barbie doll heads, and leaking dead batteries, you read the instructions the millionth time, only to realize you ended up building basically the same thing you built last time. And again, when I talked more with Elad, it was coming out this level of complexity that, DevOps was supposed to help the developers, insulate them from the level of complexity within the infrastructure. And we talk about infrastructure as a code. And the developers are finding that they're getting too much involved in that, run phase rather than just the develop phase. And it's really interesting. So I think there's a sort of growing up function happening within the cloud space at the moment, saying, okay, we've broken up the old paradigm, of applications sitting on a computer.
Yeah.
They now sit on multiple computers, or they don't sit on computers. It's sort of serverless, it's distributed, it's microservices, and that comes with it. And we've talked about, the rather scary cloud trail that CNCF, the Cloud Native Compute Foundation, puts together. And all the tool chain is so diverse and complex now, it's starting to slow down the process. And I think that's where we're at. We're at that point in the continuing, it's happened a number of times since the 60s that you get new technology, people get really excited by it, and then they go, but how do we make this easy for us, easy for us to develop? And how do we make it easier for business to understand what it's doing for them? And I just think cloud's moved into that space.
So just to kind of go down that particular rabbit hole very quickly, I don't want to dwell on it too long, just in the interest of time. But would we say we kind of started with mainframes, and then we went to sort of distributed computing environments, and then that kind of became de facto, x86, whatever, became standard. We had all those data centers, Compaq and Dell and people like that building up from the sort of late 90s, IBM into the into the 2000s and so on. And then we couldn't take that any further. So then virtualization became kind of the next thing. And then we got stuck with that for about 15 to 20 years. And then that became kind of, too slow for, provisioning, procurement, and so on. And then we went to cloud from there. Would that be kind of aligned the sort of ballpark for that?
At a very high level.
Yeah, at an extremely high level. Okay, I'll take that.
At a very high level. I mean, virtualization existed within Burroughs mainframes back in the 60s.
Yeah, but kind of just mainstream. We went mainstream with like VMware.
There's anybody out there listening going, virtualization has been around a lot longer than that, But yes, you're right. There's a sort of progression from mainframe to mini computers and PCs and to at least to a sort of slightly, two-level just architecture. And then as 3 and multi-level architecture you've got now, it's so you're just adding more and more levels and distribution to the architectures. But that's fine with the way it's happening.
Yeah, and I will be kind of I want to sort of miss out on IBM also had things like LPARs and WPARs as well. So that was kind of their sort of virtualization capability at the time. So so all of that as well. But it was just kind of mainstream. I think it was kind of with VMware. So I agree with you on the communities. I think the cloud native and open source communities are, I'm not going to say kind of guilty of that, but I'll just say kind of responsible. They have a lot of kind of responsibility of that, of coming up with that sort of scary chart with the CNCF landscape and things like that, and that, making that a as great as that innovation is, as you said earlier, we need to kind of turn that into a business advantage. What's the business advantage of doing that? So that's one point. The other point which you mentioned around DevOps, and this is a kind of a DevOps report after all, the push and pull of things like platform engineering, SRE, GitOps, has also affected that space. So it's no longer just DevOps, and we had kind of DevSecOps for a while, and that's when everybody kind of settled on that one. I think we understood what that meant. But then more recently, it's been GitOps, it's been SRE, it's been platform engineering coming up as well, which I think is actually in this report. So I think all of that is also influencing that space as well, and kind of making it a lot harder to navigate.
Yeah, well, one of the things I agree with you. I think and also the terminology platform engineering itself is now starting to spread out from its original intent, I think, and we've seen this through the course of the year, that terminologies and words that have been used to cover a subject suddenly get picked up and used much more broadly, which is not always helpful. But I think one of the things that, the history of compute in the last 20, 30 years has been one of increasing levels of abstraction.
Yes.
We're abstracting the various levels right up through the sort of stack, as it were. And I think we probably reached another point where you need to abstract the development more clearly from the operation. And at the moment, it's crossing over into infrastructure as a code makes the devs people move over into the ops sphere. And actually, you need to abstract away so that developers just develop, and then hit the button and a compiler takes over and does the operations piece. That's simplistic again, but fundamentally there's a level of abstraction that needs to happen between development and operations. Wing Cloud call it pre-flight and in-flight.
Right.
So, and interesting, what happens in pre-flight, what happens in flight, and between the two, there should be a level of abstraction.
Yeah, I think in the kind of in the discussion around platform engineering, and there was a couple of quotes I'll mention in a minute. But I did a talk recently with Advia on their Cloud Unplugged channel, and we were talking about platform engineering, kind of how where that should sit, and what's the kind of approach on DevOps and things like that. So I think that space, like I said, and we talked about before when we reviewed the Cloud Expo Europe, and we did the talk on that. I'll provide a link to the viewers on that talk that Paul and I did at that show. And I asked somebody, and I said, okay, so where does GitOps fit into all of this stuff? And I think the answer was, he said, well, if it works for your company, then just use it. So not very satisfying, I have to say. So
I think that they've all been slightly, knee-jerk responses to some of the challenges that the cloud world has faced in getting, of balancing speed and agility versus resilience and cost.
Yeah. So the two pertinent quotes that I had said platform engineering is evolving towards simplification and value delivery, adopting a PaaS mindset, a platform as a service mindset. That's fine, but I think that's kind of insular to platform engineering and not the impact of platform engineering on the wider picture. Platform engineering can run around in its own, mouse circle, whatever. It can do that, but what's it affecting outside of it is the important thing.
Yeah, you and I have had the value stream conversation at least once, if not more. And my point, usually is I see this as too insular each time, and we just said the same thing again. It's not reflective of where's the value to the business. Yes, there's a value in improving the function, but where's the value to the business? Why would you improve a function? It's of no value to the business.
Yeah,
I think that's the danger you get into here.
Yeah, and then the other quote was on SRE, site reliability engineering, and said SRE teams are crucial in analyzing environmental impact and promoting sustainability initiatives. Yes, but I think isn't that a little bit sort of late down the line to be thinking about that? I mean, when you're getting to that point, you're almost saying this wasn't architected very well, so I'm going to do it in a different way, which is a bit more efficient. And oh, look, I've saved a couple of trees or something in the forest.
It feels a little like everybody within the organization is trying to see where they can park that particular, elephant.
Passing the buck.
In rugby, we say that's a hospital pass that the SRE has been given. When you think about what you need to do around sustainability, no, as you say, it's too late. And how the heck can they be responsible for, all the scope 3 implications of what your business is doing? Never mind scope 2 and scope 1. It's way too late.
Correct. So let's pick on a couple of other points, at least for me. The one that came up was around AI, of course. And it said artificial intelligence and large language models, LLMs, may play a significant role in the domains of cloud and DevOps by addressing cognitive overload. I have heard that term before. Somebody mentioned it the other day. And supporting tasks like instant management, ticketing systems, and code generation. Now, that last one, it just seems to be kind of thrown into the statement very flippantly. And that's like, whoa, hang on a minute, that's a really big one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that, we could spend an awful long time looking at the implications of large language models generating code. And how do you build trust in those? All those issues. So, I mean, I do think AI is going to be hugely important this year. I mean, there's nothing new in that being said, and some of the values being attributed to companies who are getting into this in a space, the money chasing it means there's going to be a lot happening, some good, some bad. But yeah, people need to sort of step back a little bit and go, hold on. As you say, code generation. It's like us as a bunch of research analysts.
Yeah,
we've had to look at ourselves very, very closely and say, how do we, if we're going to use ChatGPT to help generate some of the content that we put together, which would be great, because it's, quite frankly, it's one of the sort of not banes of our lives, but actually going away and writing stuff, unless you're really fast at writing, it's about anything. Oh, ChatGPT, great. But then how do you build trust with the readership that actually what's being said has got, it's real, it doesn't matter if it's ChatGPT. How can you validate that it's actually doing what it's, that it's true, it's not biased, all those sort of issues. And the same kind of code generation is still in that same sort of boat. So we've had quite a detailed debate about how we use, and everybody will use ChatGPT, but it's got to be some level of curation and trust building and probably legislation.
Yeah. And I mean, and again, sort of I think the area of low code, no code was also mentioned in the report. But again, I mean, for that, consumers are already using that. There's consumer platforms that are generating, a full application for you. I mean, if you just look at TikTok, and if you're kind of in that way inclined, every other, video post on there is talking about low code, no code platforms that you can use as a consumer. You've got an idea, you want to write an app, sure, just go to this platform, describe what you want at a very high level, and it will all be generated for you. GUI, everything, all the back-end code, everything's going to be done for you on that platform. So I think that's also going to have an impact, and more of an impact than me sitting down on ChatGPT and saying, I love the BBC Micro. Can you write me a bat and ball game using BBC Basic? And it did do that, and it worked first time as well. So I did try that, but it's beyond that. It's kind of more, the sort of pick and choose consumer level way of generating a full application, not just code, but a full application as well. And that's already, like I said, that's already happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Okay, and then the last one that I wanted to pick on very briefly, because I'm kind of, again, just aware of time, is open telemetry. So it said open telemetry is widely adopted for collecting metrics and event-based observability data. right? And becoming the de facto standard in the industry. I like that. Now, I don't know how many of our favorite observability vendors that you and I have talked about in the past are looking at doing open telemetry or have done, but I'm glad that that's coming out of that sort of whole open source and CNCF sort of landscape where we're seeing something actually being adopted and being picked up as an industry standard.
And I absolutely agree with that. It's one of the areas that I do focus on as a research analyst. And it's one of the quickest ways to get some of the legacy IT operations management vendors on the back foot by saying, what's your stance on open telemetry? Are you still using your own SD, software development kits and APIs and whatever? Yeah. And a lot of them have already committed and started to move. They've got a lot to sort of convert, if you like, in that sense. But there are still quite a cohort of legacy vendors who aren't there yet and aren't even thinking about it. But again, it's a bit like the chart that's in the IQ, report that we've just been talking, InfoQ report we've just been talking about, in that you've got, innovators, early adopters, leaders, laggards, all those sort of things. Same here, but absolutely, it's well on the way to being a de facto standard.
Yeah, and I like that. I think that's a good outcome. And there
was somebody, and I can't remember which company it was. I'll have to go back and look at it. That showed that they could even monitor mainframe logs and events by wrapping it in an open telemetry sort of wrapper. That's the only way I can describe it. It's probably technically not the right way to describe it. But basically, they wrapped it in an open telemetry.
Okay, or some kind of encapsulation, yeah?
Encapsulation, that's the word I was looking for. Thank you. And we're able to do that. So, it's being used in a host of different ways.
Excellent. Fantastic. Okay, so lots more in the report. Like I said, we'll provide the link to the report. I think it was quite useful. It's actually a really excellent chart about software development and cloud adoption, things like that. It's kind of got the usual curve and so on it. So fantastic stuff. Okay, so we move on to the last of our topics, which is cloud lock-in real? Over to you, Paul.
Yeah, it's a perennial question you always get. If I put it all into the AWS basket, am I going to be locked in? It's a sort of muscle memory, I think, from sort of mainframe and proprietary operating environment times. In the sense that lock-in, as it used to be known in older days, like when I were a youngster, it's very different. It's not that sort of lock-in. You can take and move your applications. But I suppose two things come to mind for me. One is that it's not quite as straightforward as we would have believed. Actually, there was something in the DevOps that report, the InfoQ report about, was it WebAssembly? Was an intriguing one, and that's highlighting the way to genuine portability.
Yes,
certain spheres. And the guys at WingCloud are doing the same sort of thing, and being able to literally develop it once, run it anywhere. And so I think that's really starting to come. So the sort of lock-in that you would have had in the old days of proprietary software and proprietary hardware doesn't really exist. And quite frankly, we say to people, if you find all the best tools are AWS tools or Azure tools, and the price is right and everything like that, go all in. If that's what it is, go all in, because it's about the business benefit you're going to get. If they're the best tools for the job, go all in. But the only concern I have is that lock-in doesn't necessarily go away completely, because if you go all in, the lock-in maybe moves from the hardware and the operating system to the fact that you've got all these tools that only work on AWS and they're locked to AWS. So there's an element of concern. There are plenty of other tools that mimic what happened, but again, this is where you come back to my other argument here around lock-in and is it real, is while vendors are not trying or not intending to show that they're locking you in. The reality of their marketing and the reality of their business plans suggests that they want to make it really difficult to do two things. One, for competitors to come into the same market, and two, for customers to leave. And while they might not say that's lock-in, there's a reality that sort of kicks in that says, if something is, until something is so difficult and so painful and so costly that it costs more and is more painful than changing, I won't do anything. You know, as a salesperson within IT, do nothing was usually our biggest competitor.
Yeah.
So there's an element of, you know, getting locked in almost by your own actions. So I think you just have to be aware of that. But the lock-in that was very definitely a lock-in, because it was so difficult to move out and costly to move in the days of mainframe, or even in the days of mini computers, has long gone.
Yeah. And
I think genuine portability, really without problems, is sort of just coming. So I don't think lock-ins are real. You know, we can argue about data egress charges and the cost of data egress, and if that's an issue, you know, look at a cloud vendor that doesn't charge data egress charges, all those sort of issues.
Yeah.
So it comes back to, if you don't want to get locked in, take some sensible decisions, guys.
Yes.
Vendors don't want you to leave and they don't want competitors to get in. It's simple.
I agree with the point that, I mean, we've been around this sort of circle before, you know, with, I think in the old days, with the kind of the data center and the heyday of the data center, sort of late 90s and into the 2000s, it was, you know, the dual sourcing of vendors. You know, if you kind of bought service for your data center, you'd go with maybe HP and Dell, or IBM and HP, or something like that. So again, that was perceived as a kind of a lock-in, so you didn't want to really do that. I agree also that WASM is the kind of next generation of kind of, you know, code writing. Only the kind of stuff Java could only dream of really achieving in terms of portability, I think. Although I need to see how that's going to work, and we may have to kind of focus on that in a future.
Yeah, I think that and eBPF are ones that are, you know, opening up a lot of opportunities.
Yeah,
but at the same time, they fill me with a little bit of concern, in the sense of, you know, are they getting a bit close? Are they, you know, getting in and amongst the kernel, and are there going to be implications there? You know, so,
well, I mean, that's up to Mr. Torvald's kind of, you know, it's his discretion, I guess. I'm okay with it kind of being there, as long as it's not kind of making the whole thing bloated.
The minute you let these, you know, the danger is that this sort of smooth interface that we're used to now with APIs, you know, that sort of hard and fast rule that says, you know, you don't go and play in the next layer down or the next layer across, could get broken. And that's what happened on IBM mainframes. IBM mainframes didn't apply that rule, and actually managing and updating them was an issue, because they didn't keep to those interfaces.
Yeah, eBPF is definitely, I think, something, you know, we'll probably need to cover. I think I mentioned a while back, it was actually in one of our previous talks, but we'll need to get a little bit more focus on it. And hopefully, dear viewers, might be able to get a series on eBPF in the hopefully not too distant future on the channel as well. So look out for that. But yeah, certainly kind of WASM, I think, is part of that. And as you said, I mean, it's, you know, it's in the interest of any of these sort of, you know, vendors to really keep your business. So it's in their interest. They're not surprising really to kind of want to offer you other services and so on to keep you interested and to get you to use more of their ecosystem than, you know, third-party tools.
Yeah, there was an interesting, and I can't remember the exact words of the quote, and it was the CEO of Google. God, my brain's not working, but, you know,
you can paraphrase. It's okay.
That's all right. Okay, but he was basically talking about AI and was concerned that they were not going to be able to show any differentiation. You know, AI was going to get out of the control of vendors to be able to show differentiation. their ability to, if you like, add value, if I can use the term that locks people in, they would find really difficult. Their focus of trying to get something differentiated that nobody else can do is going to get blown away by AI, which was an interesting comment. So there's a level of, everybody's piled into AI, but one of the flip sides could be that AI will get you out of the sort of deadly embrace of a vendor pretty damn fast if you're not careful.
Yeah, and then Google goes and releases Palm 2, which is their LLM model. So
yeah, I mean, it's a drug at the moment. I've just watched, we've watched Nvidia's value go through the roof. I'm now watching another company called CoreWeave, which is basically a co-location company that used to do Ethereum mining. Its value going through the roof because it's now focused almost entirely on AI processing, and has got a relationship with Nvidia that it's parlayed into a $300 million it's $3.2 billion debt funding, based on the fact that they've got the equity they're using is the chips they've got a priority on from Nvidia.
Right.
Absolutely staggering.
Yeah.
So AI is going gangbusters.
Yeah. So again, I'm not too concerned with, because I mean, again, obviously with the advent of multi-cloud and so on, and we've talked about cross-cloud and poly-cloud in the past and so on. That I think has also probably kind of broken up that potentially any monopoly that was coming in the distance as well. But the other thing that you can do is, obviously, as part of your strategy and cloud operating model, is to deliberately have certain aspects of that model that are maintained independently. So things like your automation tools, your observability platforms, your development platforms, and so on. You can kind of, if you imagine it on a chart, you've got kind of a whole bunch of stuff going on here in AWS and Azure or whatever, GCP, whatever you've got. But actually at the top of that chart are the core elements that break down into those kind of smaller things that you're doing, those smaller activities. But those core elements, the majority of them, can potentially be independent. They're, a third-party platform that you've chosen. They're not tools that you're using from the hyperscaler themselves.
Yeah, I think that's true. I wouldn't necessarily put them above the hyperscalers. What I would put above the hyperscalers now, and we've sort of touched on this, the term meta cloud is now starting to be used, and actually, it's but it's like a metadata model. And it's basically giving you. It's like a glorified library for everything that's going on across all the clouds, that enables developers to understand the meta data and the meta tools that are out there, and to be able to literally pick and choose from a meta cloud above, knowing that they can port easily between one cloud and the other because they've got all the details. So interesting. I need to dig a bit further into that, but it's the first time I saw it as a genuine layer that sits above the existing public clouds.
Yeah,
provides almost like a library function and a sort of metadata model type environment for the tools and apps and services and libraries that need to be deployed into the cloud.
Yeah, I think the term that I would probably, although I'm still kind of not skeptical of it, but it just remains to be seen. I guess I'm skeptical of it. I'll admit that. Is the term would for me would be more of a super cloud, not a meta cloud. I think that's kind of maybe going towards sort of Facebook and their meta thing and so on. That's a bit too much in that direction for me. But a super cloud concept, I wouldn't be against that. I think that's fine. The only issue I have is that there's nothing that actually exists out there that can actually do it at the moment.
And, you come back to, given that cloud is at its core function is a consumption model.
Yeah.
Will end users be able to consume a super cloud. And
well, it's not for them.
Talking about supercloud is really a control mechanism for what's going on in the public.
It's not for them. It's for managing basically your multi-cloud environment.
So I would hesitate to call it a cloud in any way, shape, or form. But that's me. I find that term cloud gets used. So I mean, I wanted to, the wing cloud guys we just spoke to this week. I had to sort of go through a loop with them to find out actually it's not an end user service. It's really helping developers, and it's not a cloud in the sense that we know it. Uses all the cloud tools, but not a cloud in the sense we know.
Anyway. I mean, there is some in that sort of CNCF space. There is some tools that are doing certain aspects of what I would maybe consider the superclass. So things like cross-plane, which I've spoken to Victor Farsic, who's part of Upbound, I think, is a company. So they donated cross-plane to the CNCF, and what that does is basically, my understanding, and Victor's going to probably tell me off if I get this wrong, so sorry, Victor, in advance. But it's basically you're addressing multiple Kubernetes clusters with that, so you're able to actually kind of do a super Kubernetes, if you like, type of deployments. Did I just invent a new term then? Maybe I did. Super Kubernetes. So that's that type of tool, I think, is what will is one of the pieces of the jigsaw, I would say, for a super cloud sort of environment. So for me, I think it's not lock-in. I think that's the wrong term. Maybe we need to turn that on its head and say, a more of a positive term like aggregation or abstraction, is kind of, can we do cloud abstraction? Is cloud abstraction real? Can we make it, can we abstract from these platforms, these hyperscaler platforms, using certain tools that will help us to address, all of them in one go? Or we actually maybe, just like when we do serverless, we don't care, what the environment is that it's running in. Again, it'll be kind of similar to that. So it's like kind of serverless super cloud, something like that, maybe.
I think we just don't need to make the point that lock-in isn't like it used to be. You can still get yourself locked in, but it's as much down to you. I mean, think of all the tools we use just in our own daily lives that we go, oh, I can't be bothered to change that. I'm not going to change it. And somebody says, oh, well, this is much better and cheaper. And you're going, yeah, but the effort to change, And so I think you can get yourself, and businesses do this over and over again. They get locked into that. I'm not going to change. And it's now not so much the hardware, because the hardware is easy to change. But the elements of software, I mean, anybody who's got their ERP system on SAP, good luck.
Yeah, exactly.
Good luck getting out of that one, and it's because it's quite difficult to disentangle, and the pain of disentangling is greater than the benefit they think they're going to get. So lock-in exists still, but it's at a different level. It's certainly not hardware, and it's not operating systems, but some of the applications can lock you in. But as often as not, it's about management's own inability to see the benefits of new things coming down the track. And they can avoid the traditional lock-ins of the past pretty easily today.
Yes, I would agree with that. Like I said, a certain level of abstraction, if you're strategic enough, if you planned it enough, well enough, you should be able to achieve that, and relatively painlessly be able to to move somewhere else.
I think some of the new tools are going to make it very relatively painless.
But like I said, with the advent of kind of potential super cloud sort of tools, you could maybe do that even easier with the level of abstraction that will help as well. And then the other side of that being so big and having so much expertise, that you can go in all Amazon, all Microsoft, all Google, and not really care. Because if you want to go tomorrow, you just throw 200 people at it and they move you overnight into another cloud. Yeah, it's going to cost a lot of money, but hey, we don't care. We've got a lot of money. We're that kind of an enterprise. And I appreciate those are few and far in between. But the point is that, it has been done in the past. People have moved from, IBM equipment to HP equipment. And that's everything, like storage, servers, backup, networking, everything.
But the three hyperscalers are becoming more like managed services. They're adding more and more services into the mix. The more services they add into the mix, if they are good, the harder it will be to shift. Not shift in the sense of technology shift, but mindset. It works really well. It's doing what I needed to do. I'll keep going. The fact that it cost me, an extra 50p over Google Cloud or Azure or OVH or whoever else, neither here nor there, because I use such a range of tools and services from them that actually, just the learning curve of moving to somebody else's tools is going to be too much.
Yeah, and let's not forget the power of a corporate discount as well. So you can always leverage that as well. Part of
Amazon have still got a few pounds in there or dollars in their pockets they could put into that if anybody else tries to fight them on price.
Exactly.
Get into a price fight with AWS.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. Fantastic. All right. Well, I think we've come to the end of that. Kind of just gone over a little bit. But yeah. Once again, thank you, Paul. Appreciate all your insights as always. It's been a great discussion. All the links for the topics that we've had and then some, we're going to add that in the description of the video. I want to thank you all for continuing your support of the channel. Thank you for watching this special anniversary edition of Class Here to Play, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for watching this talk. If you enjoyed the content, please comment, share, like, and subscribe to support the channel. You may also want to check out some of the other videos on this channel. See you next time.